Hey guys, this is Brett Young, Taylor Young, and Rod Erb, and you're tuned in to the Be Extraordinary podcast with Erb and Young. Real conversations about business, leadership, and personal development.
Man, welcome to another podcast, Be Extraordinary podcast, joined by my partner, Rod Erb, and Landry Fields, all the way from Lexington, Kentucky, agency owner for the past 6 years in the insurance space, and somebody who's become a friend and really has gravitated towards the edge of AI and the implementation in his business, but also what other business owners and leaders and professionals can do to leverage the most powerful technology that our generation that has ever seen or anybody's ever seen. And so we're going to get into that. And it's fun to have you down to Florida, man. How are you?
Yeah.
Doing great, man.
4 months ago. 4 months ago, was it? 4 months ago, Lexington.
Yeah.
February 19th.
Yeah.
Here on a Disney trip.
Courtside.
Yeah, here on a Disney trip with your family.
Yep. So we were last doing the Bourbon Trail and
Right.
watching some UK Wildcat basketball courtside.
Instant fan. I became an
Yeah,
instant fan.
so Brett and I grew up UK fans. Families all from Lexington, Kentucky. There's very small circles that we found out that some of his best friends growing up were Brett's godparents and very familiar, one of our best friends. And so it was one of those trips that you just couldn't do any better. And Landry, you were so classy. You picked us up from the airport. We're driving around to different distilleries. And then we walked down courtside to the UK game. It was a surprise for Brett for his birthday. And it was just like first class, dude.
I appreciate it. No, it took me traveling outside of Kentucky to learn more the special aspects that we had. So I'm a huge fan of bringing people in that have either never been there or and so forth like that, and just showing off what we've got.
Well, and it's funny. There's a couple people that in our journey together over almost 20 years that are just excellent hosts.
Yes.
And you are in the top 2 or 3 of
Nice.
people that have taken us, invited us in and brought us along and just laid out an epic experience. And it's one that we
I was hoping to exceed
we
expectations.
continue to talk about you, man. So it's nice to have
That's
you
awesome.
back. It's nice to have you
there's no
back.
doubt. And there's been a friendship that's ensued from it. And originally met Brett and Rod and at One City World Tour. It was an insurance conference a couple years ago in Austin, correct, or Denver?
Yeah, and then just saw
Austin.
Brett wearing Kentucky gear on his social. So I started following him. I'm like, well, crap, now I got to get to know this guy for sure. So
He doesn't hide that.
that's how I reached out to Brett, and we just continued that friendship and came down here. This is my second time in your all's office, actually, and hung out with him a little bit, and then we just continued the friendship. But, I've become kind of the AI guy of sorts in a lot of our circles.
Yeah, so of course we're,
sense.
the day that we're going up to Kentucky and we're traveling, we get into these podcast conversations pretty quickly. I think I love that, right? It's very stimulating, but it's also so much to learn from you, and you're such a student and so curious. So we've had a lot of these conversations in the car on the way to distillery that we could probably just have recorded and had 5 episodes. So I'm fun. We get to do it formally here and talk about it. But we just had breakfast across the street, and we were getting into kind of what we wanted to get into, and AI is just this thing that's kind of found you and you were mentioning your brother-in-law and his pedigree and kind of this interest that has kind of led you to where you're following this smoke of now this kind of a little bit of an association with your business and you that AI.
Oh, for
is a part
sure.
of it.
I mean, and it doesn't even, our business is one thing, but I mean, it's going to affect every business. That's why I think it's a universal topic, obviously, right now. And everybody knows the buzzword of AI, but I think, like you all kind of alluded to in breakfast earlier, I mean, most people are kind of like, well, where do I begin half the time right now? Like it seems like you're already missing the boat. And I can already say for sure that we are just at the sunrise aspect of this whole thing with AI. So the further we get, for sure, you're going to have some catching up to do. But I mean, now's as good a time as any to jump into it and start figuring out what's happening, because, I've been talking a lot about just like where we're at, where we're going, how to kind of just begin in that sense. And I know that's a huge question mark for most business owners and entrepreneurs out there right now.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast yesterday. I think we were talking about a breakfast. Now it's to the point where, and I was relating it was like kind of when social media started to become a thing in business, where you have agencies that were quick to adopt. A lot of businesses are very slow to adopt, but it was just clearly one of those things that from a marketing perspective and a brand perspective now is understood that it's one of the most powerful ways to market your business, right? And AI is like that, but on like a lot of steroids, right? Like to where you understand it's a thing, But I think like me and most business owners, you're using it. I'm using it a lot, like a lot. But
I mean, you're daily now.
But I'm also a little intimidated by I'm intimidated is not, I'm overwhelmed with information and utility that I go like, dude, where do I start? What would be a framework?
Well, I'd like to further. I think the daily application is help me through this, help me get a perspective on this, help me understand this. I think that's where people are pretty clear. But when you want to start deploying it at scale and you want to start to say, hey, create a training manual, create a pro forma, and then you want to make it intuitive and train it along the way. To me, that's where it gets it changes for a little bit.
Will you define, before we get in, because I don't want to assume the listener knows, define in a very condensed way the versions of AI, the ones that help you think, the ones that help you do versus otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, I think that an easy way to do is LLM, large language model. For those that don't know, is that's your OpenAI ChatGPTs, that's your Google Geminis, your Claudes, your Microsoft Copilot, and there's hundreds of them out there, DeepSeek, et cetera. That's what we're in essence talking about, large language models, LLMs. From that, for the last couple of years, since ChatGPT first launched between Thanksgiving and Christmas of I think it was 2022, and became this buzzword, and people were showing each other at Christmas like, what it can do this, it can make up stories, like, wow. We've been in what's called the generative AI space right now. Generative AI being, it generates something, you're prompting it, you're saying, I want this to be done, and it does it, but it's still in a very human handheld capacity scenario. We are currently moving from the generative AI space into the agentic AI space, or agents kind of space. And that is more of you're no longer truly hand-holding the AI, but in essence saying, here's what I need done. And it is no longer has any boundaries necessarily what it can do. I mean, there still are some right now, but those are getting fewer and fewer. It's expanding its boundaries of what it can do. And so it could be as simple as do this for me, and it just goes and gets it done, whether it's at this website or this, that, or the other. It could say, hey, I want to make this for dinner on Friday night. Go find me the ingredients, order it, have it delivered to my house by this point in time. And it goes and does all that, checks it out at the Instacart, has it delivered at a certain time, whatever. And so that's the idea of as we move from generative AI, you're kind of in that ecosystem to now we're putting legs and hands to these superhuman brains in essence as we move into agentic AI. And that's the part where you're kind of, I would almost say right now where I've had to do a lot of just unlearning of what's possible, because that's where I think that's the disconnect. It's like everything we've known to be possible, or the restrictions of what's possible, is now being unraveled. So I'm having to retrain my brain on what the capacity is for this stuff and diving into it. And there's a lot of good places to start for sure. But that's, I think, a good way of at least understanding where we're
essentially
at.
Practically it's like, okay, I've traditionally used it as, hey, what are the best top 5 places in the area that I should go, considering that I have kids and I'm interested in Mexican and Italian food, right? It pops it up, gives you recommendations, filters, maybe ask some questions about what's important to you. And now it could go to the point where, hey, can you go ahead and just book me a reservation given this criteria? And it actually does. So it goes from clarifying thinking to actually being able to execute outside of that. And that's the agentic baseline. Is my understanding that correctly?
And to an extent, and to even more extreme, where maybe it doesn't even necessarily book it online, but people don't realize it can actually start just calling places.
Sure.
And so I think that's a realization of people have aha moment of realizing your businesses are going to start getting called by AI this year. Within the next 12 months, you're probably going to start getting calls from an AI on behalf of a human trying to accomplish something, check on something, order something, whatever it is your business you're doing.
So
are we ready for that is the question.
Well, it's a lot of solicitors. Yeah, it's a lot of solicitors.
I'm like, holy cow, I'm thinking to myself, man, now I got to figure out, is this Landry or is this Landry AI?
Well, I think everyone, for me, I understand, because I think it was almost like, remember when virtual assistants became very popular? I would say a decade ago, maybe a decade and a half ago, where it was cutting edge to go, hey, if there's these tasks that are maybe lower level, that you would go offshore and you'd have groups that started spinning up, and there was a lot of that, right? So that was kind of ahead of the curve. And then now you have AI, which there's a part in the marketplace for both, but it's like that. But I understand that the workforce at large, what we are doing now will not be what we're doing in the future. But I also hold the same truth that a lot of roles, mine included, there is a large portion of my day that I wish that I did not have to do.
Yeah.
Right. I wish that I could, that doesn't seem like human work at scale. And so it's all, there's doom and gloom. And then there's this tremendous positive aspect that you try to hold together, you know?
I think about it in terms of, and it doesn't scare me that way. I think it's exciting to think that there's going to be a limit to what it can do, I believe, right? I mean, it can do things, but I don't know that it can authentically make you feel a certain way, right? So in my own, organization or trying to figure this stuff out, I think to myself, like, it's exciting to think that we're going to have people in the roles that are their highest and best. Maybe it's the highest payoff activity for the business, right? And all the minutia that I think we get distracted with, like you say, the stuff you don't want to do, still got to get done. But is it the stuff that you're the best at? Probably not,
like
right?
If you're training a team member, one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to take inventory. What are your highest level of activities?
Amen. Yeah.
What are you doing that we no longer need to do, or somebody else could do, right? But it was just that on steroids.
Well, and that's what's exciting. It's like imagine giving everybody a chance to understand that this is where we see this role's most valuable tasks. And we want you to get really good at that because, and if you choose to, you can't be replaced. Nothing can be replaced from your authenticity and just the human element, the human touch. I think that's the one saving grace that I think about in this whole conversation. Like, yeah, things are going to get replaced. I don't think we're coming for, I don't think the concept is, oh my God, my job's in jeopardy. I don't think that globally. I think it's just going to allow people to the runway to get better, to be able to stack some skills that maybe become more valuable.
See, I think jobs are in jeopardy.
I'll put it this way, to meet you all in the middle here, because I'm figuratively,
literally
in the middle. There was a CEO that said that basically, the way we understand it now, the easy jobs that exist out there are going to be gone.
Yeah, let me rephrase. I'm talking about the tasks within the job. Clearly, sure. I mean, yeah. I don't want that to be lost.
Yeah,
I'm not naive to that. But
the easy jobs though will be obsolete for the most part. Hard jobs will become the new easy jobs, and the impossible jobs will become the new hard jobs. So when we're thinking about that, whether it's white collar, blue collar, different aspects like that, there's going to be a separation of aspects of, like, you're going to have to transition some of your skill set, and otherwise you're going to go one direction or the other.
That's what
right. That's right. That's
exactly what I was referring to.
Yeah. And because of that, in that role, we're going to have to become more and more, like, as business owners, we are often more of the conductors of the symphony, is the analogy I like to use a lot. With the different roles and different instruments and different people and different positions and different seats. But more and more so, the staff that we have, or employees we have, and people we have are going to also need to become micro conductors of their own symphony of, like, managing AI agents and quote unquote AI employees. And so I think one of the big things that will, as people move to more of a diversified skill set, will be becoming more and more of leaders and managers themselves, because they're going to be managing not necessarily real people, but figurative AI type of employees doing the work on behalf of them. So, for example, I always point out, maybe I don't need a trumpet player anymore and I can replace it with some an AI type of scenario. But that's not an excuse for me anymore to not know what the trumpet player is supposed to be doing, what the parameters of it, if its role are, where it comes in and fits in the grand scheme of the orchestra. I still need to know that. I just don't necessarily need to know how to play the trumpet anymore.
That makes complete sense.
That's really, really good.
Yeah, when you went over that at breakfast, as far as the conductor of the orchestra, and then this idea of this exponential agentic force where you would be able to go to a key team member and go, hey, I know you've needed support. You've referenced that. We've acknowledged that 50, 60% of your job is whatever it is, right? You've escalated your skill set. What if we give you a team of 3 and for different types of role, and you train it and you work with it, and it's support, right? I think anybody that's ever been in a job that you're pushing up against capacity and you go, I don't know how I can do more, or whatever it is, and then it kind of breaks. You mentioned having to retrain your thought. It's almost like for our business, how many representatives we have to service households. We have to almost rethink the number based upon this new workforce that we're going to potentially align with. Not even potentially, that you'll be required to align with. Right?
I love what you said, transitioning skill sets. That's a great way to put it. It's like the stuff that we did thinking it was important. It's not only it not only hasn't been the most important thing, now it's gone.
Okay, so here's the thing. I get it's important. I've heard AI more than I'd like to.
Yeah.
I'm terrified by it, or I'm excited by it. But regardless, I'm in a professional seat. I am in a role. I'm in a business. I'm a business. You know, we talked about it's like, where do you even start? Yeah. You know, where do you start? And then let's progress that through what are the very basics and low-hanging fruit that most people miss, and where should we go from there?
As you know, it's changing very rapidly. Like, I mean, it's daily, weekly. This LLM, large language model version, is now exceeded this. This one's exceeding this. They're all eventually going to probably get to a even level where they're all pretty much as smart as each other, right? So there's kind of a race to the top, even though they're all going to get to the top in a lot of ways. That being said, we're also in this transitionary period, like I said, where we're moving from generative AI to agentic AI. So there's many ways right now where I'm almost hitting pause on the agentic AI aspect, but making sure I'm constantly monitoring and knowing, I know where we're going, and we can speak to that a bit more
conceptually.
But, you know, all the steps on where we're how to get there, or what's going to be necessary for me and my business or your business, it hasn't been fully laid out yet, as people are as companies are kind of reconfiguring to in this new world where we're headed with agentic AI. So that being said, again, where do I start? You know, one, we need to start for sure if you haven't, because I think we've heard this too. A lot of times, especially we're in insurance, we've been hearing for many years, like AI is not going to replace agents and agencies, but those who are leveraging it and using it will replace those who are not. And so I think we all can agree and understand that concept. But what do we all have at our fingertips already? Most of us already using Microsoft Outlook in those ecosystems, or Google Workspace in those ecosystems, right? I mean, every single business out there, for the most part, is running one of those two software. And natively within those, you already have AI being embedded into, you know, Excel and Word and OneDrive or Google Drive or Chat, as well as some of the creative aspects that with Copilot is Microsoft, Gemini is Google, that you already have at your fingertips. And for those who don't know, Copilot is got ChatGPT in as far as it's leveraging for its Copilot scenario, and Gemini is its own thing with Google, which is equally as good as ChatGPT and OpenAI. And those are already right at your fingertips to start playing around with. So it's like finding ways you can already use it. So for one example, we didn't mention this, I want to save it for the podcast, is you can as simply as right now with either Copilot or Google Drive and stuff like that, is start leveraging it for the information you already have. And so I think a lot of companies had merged over to these internal website pages for staff and so forth like that. Do you all have one of those, I assume, in some capacity, maybe like an internal website where there's just information just for employees and stuff like that?
We use Monday.com and a CRM and different like process and procedures kind of thing.
Yeah, and it could be like, you know, what are the vacation days off, or this is just like an internal website.
Yeah, almost like an intranet type.
Exactly, intranet type. A lot of companies have that, right? That's become popular. But I'm finding myself moving more and more away from that, just from a standpoint of usually it was a lot more of just here's information that my staff needs and here's where you can go find it, to just putting it in I'm on Google, so the Google Drive type of scenario. And so now it can be as simple as a couple of ways of starting to play around with it. One, they can now just search, like for example, in Google Drive, and Copilot can do the same thing. You can start just searching for stuff. So like, you know, we're in insurance, so we have, you know, underwriting guidelines, policy jackets, this, that, or the other, who writes what, who doesn't. Well, you can all put that in a folder in your OneDrive, and then the staff, if they're shared with that folder, can just go start searching for it in Copilot or Gemini now to find it. And so rather than
OneDrive is already in there.
It's already in our ecosystem that you're using. And so now while I'm on the Google one, I can just hit ampersand, select Google Drive. Now Gemini knows it's searching Google Drive, not the internet or something else like that, and say, hey, what is this? What's our carrier code for this company?
Whoa.
5 seconds later, I've got it. Rather than me spending, 2, 3, 5 minutes going in, finding which folder it was, I forgot. Searching emails, going into finding the folder that I have an Excel spreadsheet with all this information listed, scrolling through the spreadsheet, finding it. It's just finding it in like 5 to 10 seconds right there. And so empowering my employees to start, I've put this here, you start asking it type of scenario in our ecosystem that we already have is a good place in step one for that purpose.
And you mentioned this breakfast, state the obvious. If you're using a free version, get the paid version, right? And we go into just
it's free, they're using your data.
Yeah. Yeah. So get the paid version, regardless whether it's private,
Right.
whether it's business. I mean, you definitely don't want the free version.
And like we talked about with security, that's obviously an important thing. But we're already utilizing OneDrive, Google Drive, emails, this, that, or the other.
Big backing.
Yeah,
Big
with
security backing.
we're already comfortable enough from a security standpoint for the most part. Of general information, not high level, information, maybe like banking records or whatnot. But you're already used to that, and if you just kind of dive in at least a little bit to kind of figure out how you can implement Copilot or Gemini in your ecosystems you already have, because it's already there for you, I think is a great place to start. Whether that's creating custom GPTs in Copilot, creating custom gems in Gemini, which are kind of like saved little shortcuts, kind of it already knows what it's tasked for, like for us, policy scraping, policy comparison, this, that, or the other. There's so many ways you can start utilizing it that you got to just start playing around with it right now in that sense. Maybe watch some YouTube videos or something like that.
Yeah, because that's another thing. Is like it's role specific, right? So what I'm looking for it to do may not be what my coworker's looking for it to do, because they have different jobs, right? They have different requirements. So let's say you're a commercial lines relationship manager or account manager, you have renewals coming up, and you want to see, is this option, what are the differences between this option and this option? Put together a summary for me to talk about the differences and exclusions, whatever it is. You're able to do that right now.
Yes, I would say though, if you're not on Google, I would recommend going to Google. It's by far way ahead of where Copilot is right now from some of the things that it can do. What I mean by that is, maybe you don't know this yet for those using Google right now, but I can do a deep research scenario of something, which is awesome. And if it's not done deep research, there's another thing you can use it for. It's like, hey, I need to know about this or this potential prospect, this, that, or the other. Hit deep research, and it'll go and spend 15 minutes, 30 minutes finding everything it can on the internet or whatever's out there based upon that for you, and then summarize it. But here's the cool part, that this is just last week. Because it's changing so rapidly. This was just last week where it was like, I realized on the export, it's like, hey, here's the summary. You click on it, it opens the deep research summary, which is usually can be lengthy. You can then hit a button, export that to a document, or it gives you like 3 or 4 other options, which is export it into a podcast. So then it just goes and creates a podcast of fake people talking about it. So if someone's good at learning that way, you can just start listening to what his research found. 2, you can actually create infographics. You can just hit a button and it creates infographics based upon all the information it found. And then you can also you can export it into a web page scenario. So then it'll just code the whole thing into a web page scenario that you could go and put onto a web page thing as well. So it's crazy what's happening right now and what the possibilities are.
I want to back up to the Copilot or Gemini. So you say you used an example, and this will sound like a pretty stupid question, but you're telling me if I type in there, you asked for the agency code for a carrier.
Yeah.
Is it searching my environment or the whole environment?
Whatever you're shared with. So like if it's employees that have, so shared folders become more of the relevant part of it.
There we go. Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. That's what I thought, but I just want to make sure.
So then I'm like, don't ask me. Ask the AI that we already have that knows where this is and what it is.
I can't tell you how many times that happens to the leadership
Right?
team. Hey, where's the XYZ for this?
That's
right. And then
resonating
like
with me.
that person's out of town. It's happening right now. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, well, she's out of town, so I got to wait till she gets back and I'll ask her. It's like, it's fascinating. I think about all the different ways that we get commission statements, and like it's 150 carriers and they all have instructions on where you go and what to do. It's like,
well, they're all written somewhere.
It's all written somewhere. So you give that to them and you go, hey, where do I get okay, this is how you do
You're
it.
like, I know I sent this to you 6 months ago. I'm like,
Yes.
you can't find it. It's in an email somewhere, this, that, or the other.
So
That's
that would
really,
be a good,
really
so
cool.
that's
That's
right
a
here
huge-
for the
yeah.
listeners. Like a good place to start is basically take inventory of what you're currently doing already, and then rethink through how you could equip, the infrastructure to be able to start just saving you time and getting what you're already needing. And
To piggyback on that with a training aspect is the amount of training you can create in next to no time, whether that's, processes and procedures in a written scenario, whether it's more of a visual thing, like you can create your own avatar and things like Hey Jen, HEYGEN, where it's just either a fake one or it could be me or you with our voices. That it's just like, here's the script that ChatGPT or Gemini came up with for a training thing, and pictures, this, that, or the other. It'll put it all together. And so from a training standpoint too, that's another thing that takes so much of our time, right? As far as I need to show how this is done, this is done, this is done. Well, that shouldn't be a huge task for us anymore, honestly. Or if to create something for it, well, man, I should really create something so that next time somebody asks me this, there's something for them as far as the process, procedures, and our laid out thing. Well, now you can just you can do it in a matter of, 5 minutes or something like that, or less, just have the AI do it for you type of scenario, and just
it's so good for presentations and organization of thought. Sorry, go ahead.
That's just mind blowing, right? It's just mind blowing to think to myself, and then you can grade the stuff it's like I just think about that creating the training, and then when you want to talk about training adherence or training, implementation, it's like you can track, you can record someone who's done the thing that you've created through the model, and grade them on did they hit all the components of the training, which is something else that totally blows me away.
I don't know if Microsoft Copilot has a training thing. Google has a native classroom that a lot of schools already use. Well, technically, in your Google, if you're on Google Workspace, it already has that as a part of your subscription too. So, like, we're going to be currently here soon starting to build out some of these training things in Google Classroom, where it's right there, and I can do that exact scenario of like, all right, here's a new employee. Here's your first, month, 2 month, 3 month, like everything laid out, and it's in it. And you can see it and just start going through the modules that you've created in there, and you've used AI to help create those things a lot of times.
So, wow, that's good with onboarding. I was actually thinking, so for the listener, the cost of these platforms, right? Because sometimes you think like, oh my gosh, the power in this, it's got to be so expensive. But we're talking $20-$30 a month for a lot of these subscriptions.
Depends, yeah.
Right.
I mean, for my Copilot, for Google, it's just embedded in your native already. It didn't cost you anything else.
Yeah.
Maybe Copilot does that here soon. I mean, by the time this comes out, maybe they've switched it. I don't know. Who knows? But right now, it's still a small fee.
You think about adoption, right? We talked about it at breakfast. Like, you think about internet adoption, and people are like, I don't know. It's like, and I still laugh at the people that don't want to put their personal information in, right? That's comical to me. But like this, it's like it's just coming so fast. It's like you see the wall coming at you, and it's like that adoption.
You think you see the wall.
Well, it's a good point.
So you're looking out in the distance at the horizon. You think
wall's already passed,
and then it's like, wait, wall's passed.
Wait a minute, here's another one coming. No, it's that's exciting.
And I just think I can't help the listener. I just want to encourage you: don't give up. Stay involved. Like I think for me, as I was talking to somebody I worked with yesterday, and I said, hey, no, just you have a good idea. Just record the steps that you do and throw this in ChatGPT and work with it. And say, well, I never used it. I don't know what it's like. And it's like, that's okay. Just use it. It'll be like anything else. The more you use it, you'll go, oh my gosh, like that came out, or I have an understanding of what it can do and what it's not good at yet. It'll tell you, hey, this is too large for me right now, or whatever. That's been my experience. And then the more and more, it's almost like the discipline of to continue to engage, even though you don't have it all mapped out, because I get overwhelmed by the utility. I think about the a million things you can do right away.
Same,
but it's just like anything else. It's like coming back from a conference and you hear all these great things. And just take one thing that you learned and implement it with discipline and execution, and your business will improve.
Yeah, I think a good place to start too is everybody start. Here's the do's and don'ts, the expectations as far as using it in your company, what we allow, what we don't allow, so that everybody knows. Okay, here's where my sandbox
is. Yes.
Yeah. You don't do this. You don't share this. You can do this. And then just let people start trying to figure things out too, because honestly, I realize other people are going to figure out things that I don't figure out, or quicker than I could figure it out. So why don't we start just letting people figure out and play around with this stuff? Because it's so new. Like, no one's a full-on expert yet.
That's a good point. That's a good point. It's like even the stuff that's intuitive to you that you would be searching out or you would be creating may or may not be intuitive to somebody else, but they're looking at something and going, how did Landry miss this? Yeah. This is so easy. Let me go ahead and start tapping away.
Well, isn't it like the baseline of the United States of America, like in its perfect, most conceptual way, even though we know there are flaws, is to say there's this centralized federal government that is supposed to just be able to be the framework to make sure that people can play. But then there's this power of decentralization and innovation that comes from like, hey, no, the people in that local economy that know that community are better equipped to make certain decisions versus the federal government. That's kind of how I feel like in a business where you're looking to get overwhelmed, like making the standard of the do's and don'ts to protect the whole, but then unleashing innovation through decentralization.
That's a great way to put that, dude.
And allow it to work within that framework. Because I know I feel the pressure as a leader to almost go one by one and try to solve every problem within the agency with it. And it's like, dude, like, why don't you just do the do's and don'ts and then equip the team to do that?
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's a great place to start.
You know, Landry, I'm sitting here thinking, you know, you've been doing a lot of speaking on this lately, right?
Yeah.
You've been traveling around, I think Kentucky and maybe Arkansas, you know, kind of some states
Several
around
states, a lot of podcasts.
doing a lot of talking and speaking on this topic. Talk to the listener about kind of what's your message been? What's kind of been the sequence that you've shared from the stage?
Yeah.
That's kind of given people maybe a broader understanding. Clearly, we talked about where to start. I think that's very practical. But then maybe go a little higher level about kind of what you're seeing, just business in general, not necessarily insurance.
Yeah. I mean, that's the starting right now, and where do I start is the most common question, and that we definitely wanted to address that, et cetera. I think also doing that from a framework of kind of realizing where we're headed, and just in the last probably 3 to 6 months has been more clear for sure of where we're headed, and that we're going to get there quicker rather than later with this idea of agentic AI. There's a couple things. There's A2A, which is a Google agent-to-agent protocol that's being laid out right now. There's what's called the MCP protocol, Model Context Protocol, that's being laid out. That is going to be that next iteration, allowing us to kind of just turn AI on for doing tasks for us in a full-fledged manner like a human would. And so that's where we're headed. I mean, the future, like I said, of where we're at is going to be a lot more. You know, there's human emotion. If there's human emotion involved, there's always going to be some kind of human interaction. But that's where we got to figure out how's this really going to play out from a business standpoint of like, I'm going to kind of like you said, I'm going to be able to 10x the capabilities basically of what my business has been able to do if I'm leveraging this technology and so forth. Yeah, capacity. And so, am I preparing for that? A lot of it right now is just kind of I will say be cautious right now because there's a lot of quote unquote AI technology out there that is just paying somebody to basically just do a really good prompt on their ecosystem that you could probably kind of do in Copilot or Google Gemini or ChatGPT if you really kind of played around with it. And a prompt being just kind of laying out the detailed instructions. I think it's another good place I don't want to overlook either is like in your playing around with the stuff and learning how to prompt or just, you know, Google or YouTube it. Here's a brilliant idea. A lot of times if you don't know if the LLM can do it, just ask it if it can do it or ask it to teach you how to do it. Or if you're like, hey, I really want this prompt, I need this done, you just say, hey, you're like, for example, prompting. A lot of times is the best way of saying, hey, lay out who this AI now is for you and what it represents. Hey, you are the masterclass prompt engineer. I need a prompt for this. Create me the template for what the best type of prompt for this output, blah, 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 is. And it will actually help even develop the prompt that you need for it to put into it type of scenario to get what you're out of it. Like, that's what I'm saying, unlearning what we've always been knowing of like, well, I don't know if it could do that. Like, it's so smart. It can help teach you what it is even capable of or how it should even work, et cetera, as well. But really, I mean, the future is going to be here very quickly. We talked about the end of the decade. I mean, by the end of the decade, it is going to be vastly different as far as the world we live in as this thing kind of takes on a arms and legs life form of its own as far as its capabilities and understanding where our business is going and the technologies are going. I think just from keeping up and at least not just kind of putting our fingers in our ears, but just kind of like, I don't need to do everything right now. Yeah. And I don't want anybody to get that picture other than just starting to really play around and get into it and not be afraid of it type of scenario. But there's a lot of moving parts right now, and so seeing where we're going, that the reality is, it's going to be able to be doing full things that humans are capable of doing. It doesn't matter if it doesn't have an API access to that website. I mean, there's technically things called VLMs, visual language models now, that are up and coming that it can just move the mouse around your computer screen and go into websites, this, that, or the other, and do stuff like a human would. So understanding the capabilities of where we're going, I think, is just the other part of right now of knowing we're going to be talking to AI people that are calling our offices, like I said, and this, that, or the other. And just know that that's what's coming is, I think, going to be helping prepare us too.
I would love to get you guys' opinions. Like, when I think about this, it's like, who wins in this world? Like, I was listening to a podcast, and we're talking about, and this is all perspective historically, and I'm obviously taking this reference somebody made that, I don't know, it's like 80% of the world at one point was farming, and then now it's 3% or whatever it is. And, do we have more or less output? And it's more, right? We have more food than we could possibly imagine in certain areas of the world from a significantly less population that is doing the actual job, right? So that's the example that is used most often, is like the farming example. But you're looking at the net benefit, but you go, okay, well, how do I win in this environment? That's kind of what I wanted to know. And for some reason, I think of Kobe Bryant, right? Like, rest in peace. But I think about, he was a unique individual because he was so driven and obsessed and disciplined and all of that, but he was also extremely curious and open-minded, where he had this insatiable appetite to learn the very subtleties and the details of basketball, right? Whether it was down to angles, or he was always able to take something from somebody else. I remember when he trained with Hakeem Olajuwon, he was working on the dream shake. You're like, what are you doing working on the dream? Like, but there was always something. But it's mirroring to me the person that's able to take a tremendous amount of curiosity, playfulness, and then also this disciplined execution to be able to work through frustration, work through the not knowing, take an idea from an idea to an actual implementation and see that through, iterate and do that. But I'm just curious if anything comes to mind, and when you think, who wins in this next season? How can we prepare as professionals, as kids, as whatever it may be?
Before you answer that, Tay, I think to myself, what's the season? What's even the season, right? Who wins in the season? Is it the next 5 months until we get, or 7 months till we get to the end of the year, 6 months till we get is it
just this next phase, right?
Yeah.
This next turning, if you will. if you looked at the last 25 years as the birth of the iPhone and social media and personal brands and that kind of phase, and now we're in this season of like machine learning and the death of the expert, because I can become an expert. I think about the Matrix, dude. He's talking about like learning something in 15 minutes and a deep research. It's kind of like in the Matrix, where you want to know jujitsu and then you upload jujitsu.
That's probably coming. I don't know. That's that one I'd be a little worried about. I think the easy answer is those that are looking at it as opportunity. I think it's maybe as simple as that. Those that are realizing this change is happening, looking for the opportunity that's there, versus those who are not, or kind of they're going to be kind of falling behind a little bit in that capacity. And that's, me and you have kids or younger, obviously than his, but a little bit.
Why is it obvious?
Well, I mean,
come on, dude.
I have more grades.
But I think this is still relevant. They're not that much older than that, in the sense that there's still a relevant question of like, I think about that all the time for my kids. Like, what do they need to know? Like, and I think that correlates to my business and staff and so forth like that. Of how, so like, what do they need to know? Where's the goalpost moving in the Wayne Gretzky scenario illustration there for when they graduate? Because clearly what we've been teaching them for so long is just on its surface, just gone now.
It's obsolete.
Yeah. So what is the new, where's the goalpost moving type of scenario? And there's a couple job reports things out there that show kind of the top rising skills by 2030. And a lot of it's, either, AI related stuff. A lot of it's leadership, or just personalization, thinking critically as far as that goes. Because I think you need to be able to pivot and make decisions.
Different information,
and
different
be
decision.
adaptable. You have to be adaptable in this new environment. And if you're not adaptable, that's going to be very hard for you. We all know that people have been sitting there doing the same thing. Well, we've always done it this way.
Oh my gosh,
right?
Yes.
Just slaughtered.
Right? And so you're not you're not looking for the opportunity if you're asking the question, or if you're saying it in that way, or asking the question in that way. And then one of the other things too was with leadership, I thought was interesting in that list was the idea of influence. And that comes naturally, I think, with us. With I have my own podcast with so forth in Kentucky and so forth. And not being able to put myself out there, but people are going to be gravitating towards real, authentic things they can connect with in this new world where we don't know what's real anymore. And so finding ways to show how the authenticity and the real human connection aspect from a leadership and place of influence is going to be key as well. In this new age.
That's where I draw so much peace in this AI conversation. As much as it's unknown, as much as it could be scary, I always draw peace in the fact that I believe that the thing that I enjoy the most, and the thing that I think is my skill that I'm the best at, in my not compared to anybody, just inside of me, is just sitting down and just talking with somebody, sitting down and
Making connections,
just making connections, and I've always. That's always excited me about business, but it definitely excites me knowing that there's so much of this stuff that I don't know and that doesn't come natural to me. Even though I'm figuring it out, I draw a lot of peace from the fact that what you just said, I completely have resonated with.
Yeah, that's, also it's like there's going to be a draw to the opposite. I think for every reaction, there's other reactions to say, I'm now expecting when somebody writes me an email or somebody writes me a thank you card, I'm expecting that they got it through ChatGPT. Somebody did a poem. Somebody in my family did a poem for their. I was like, that entire thing was ChatGPT. So there's also like a skill for me. If I get prompts to where it helps me do something, to write something, I try to humanize it. Even if it's training it in my voice, I still try to do something unscalable or do something in the writing that would make you think like it's not too formal. Like it's there's something where I'm seeking is like, was this real?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to come across that saying, hey, maybe I got some help, but I'm going to try to get across that this was real.
That's why, not to go off on a tangent, but that's why scripts always make me nervous, right? Scripts are important, and scripts are meant to equip people. But it's like if I read the script exactly the way it's written, someone's going to be like, this guy is reading from a script.
Yeah.
And it's like it's very difficult at that point to remove the mechanics of it. Then it's, I won't respond to mechanical, but if you
But it's what's crazy about AI is you just go, hey, my worst nightmare is this email comes off as mechanical.
Correct. That's what
Here's
I'm saying.
1,000 emails for me, right, in my own voice.
And the new generation is very drawn to trying to find authenticity and realness type of scenario, right? Like the younger kids in social media, because they've grown up in this social media environment where everything's put on its best foot forward at all possible, at any possibility. But to your point, in that sense of we're not getting any politics, but take the most recent election stuff of how everybody was drawn to the let's just hit record and it's not scripted and people are just having conversation.
Even if it's off the wall stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And so people were way more in this whole shifting of how everything from the last political election really transpired with that.
Culturally, that just would tell you that's
point.
Where the culture sits currently, right? You have the buttoned up politician versus the guy that's willing to go up there without a script and say anything. And he won by a landslide. Right?
Well, and look at the channels that he used to say to you. I mean, you got Joe Rogan. I mean, you got you got these people showing up on podcasts for God's sakes. To where that's a great perspective.
And you maybe you haven't thought about this, but I want to compliment you all and what I look up to you all in a lot of ways, which is the culture. And I think you have no idea how valuable that is, maybe in the grand scheme of the future. I've heard, for those who know Gary Vee was like, there's going to be somebody. He's a master marketer. He's like in the future. We've been in a social media environment where he thinks we're now kind of moving towards what he would call a preference media environment. Also the idea that now it's just feeding you only what you want type of scenario rather than me going and finding what I want. It's now giving me what I want automatically. But saying this way, there's going to be people out there that have jobs or it's just like, hey, you're hiring me to just go on walks with you for the human connectivity one day. Now extrapolate that out. What is going to be? We're going to go to live music concerts just so we can hear live music being played. We're going to want to have artists with art that was actually done by hand because everything else can just be done on a computer
certified
just
organic,
by prompted.
Right,
certified. Right.
It's
and
AI free.
In a business sense in the world, I think if we're now internalizing that, not from you can do the consumer part of it, but also the internal part of it, that aspect of what is important as far as connectivity with humans and the environment and with our staff and the culture we create in our staff, I think is going to be even that much more important, which is
you could almost
kudos
work
to you all for
backward.
that.
Well, dude, what a compliment.
Yeah, that is a great compliment.
You've always been, since we've gotten to know each other, very vocal about that, and I know we reciprocate and we see the same in you and really value your friendship. And leadership, man. For sure. And I heard a podcast the other day about restaurants and how there's open spaces in community type places are becoming more of a thing where people want to go and connect. And it was actually this Morgan Housel book that was written about, the name's going to escape me, but the essence of the book is talking about how bad we are as humans predicting the future, but it focuses more on how certain things don't change, right? So if we can find those behaviors, like you just mentioned, the social connection, right? There are certain things that I look and I go, well, I don't want that to be replaced. I value that. That I don't care. If I call a place, rather than holding and going to voicemail and then calling me back 3 days later, I'd rather just talk to a bot and get my answer quicker, get me direct. I think there are a lot of things that people can agree upon, and each individual is going to have to choose what I value and what I'm seeking authentic, rather than everything is authentic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Take Airbnb, for example. You have a point there. Sorry.
No, I think about that, right? It's like, but that's that norm will be challenged, right? It's like I've called the underwriter. I couldn't get my answer, I'm waiting, or I've emailed them, whatever. I just think that whole there's a whole rabbit hole with that about, let me just get it from Taylor AI or Landry AI, and I'm on my way.
Certain parts of that transaction that you would actually go, you know what, but I want to talk to a person on this because I need to know how to educate the prospect and what I should be reselling.
Well, we'll go back to influence, right? It's like I get my quick answer. I didn't like my answer. Now I've got to escalate my narrative, or I've got to escalate my ask. You better have those skills to be able to do that, because you're not going to be able to program anything to do that.
Because we're in insurance, and now everyone has a CIC plus level.
CSI, CRFA,
CIC, yeah, CIC, like these credentials in insurance. But all of our clients now have that capability of knowledge at hand at any moment in time.
Absolutely.
But take, for example, Airbnb. There's a lot of the Airbnb models that have been switching to the people that are clearly winning. They're creating unique experiences, and people are more and more gravitating to. I don't just need a place to stay, or boutique hotels.
Yeah,
we just got back from an anniversary trip to Charleston. It's a boutique hotel. It's not a chain, and the chains are great. But it was like they had happy hour every night, free happy hour at 4 p.m. for clients. They had free food and this, that, or the other. I mean, the level that they went to, you're like, that's awesome. I want to gravitate toward an experience there.
To that point, I just saw an Airbnb that was in the Pinehurst, North Carolina, in the Carolina area, and it was the golfers Airbnb. And it's like, you've got every room has got a golf theme, but then there's like a par 3 golf course around the there's putt in the backyard. It's like, that's really cool.
Well, and you just hit something, because I'm thinking about practical for the listener, right? You think about client experience, right? Like, again, maybe your client's not looking for what you know, they're looking for an experience, right? So you can build through that lens. But how about, hey, that team member you're recruiting, they're not necessarily looking for just another place to work. They're looking for an experience to work there. And we talked about that at the end of breakfast. We was talking about, how brand and association and all of a sudden these things called leadership and inspiration, all these stuffs where you go, okay, well, take the minutia of a given job. Like, what are you doing here? Like, what are your goals and dreams? I have to see my dreams within your dreams. That stuff doesn't go away. I still have to believe and follow the concept and the model. And it's this like attract like thing that says, take everything else aside. If there was an equal playing field, who am I more like and what am I drawn to? And I think about that for the workplace too.
I think that's very important in the sense that there's a reality that we could like it, love it, hate it, whatever. We're not talking about this, but there could be a scenario where there's might be universal basic income of sorts, and if it's that, the money in some ways, as far as being able to find ways to make it, might actually become less and less of a premium as far as options and ways to do that. So may or may not, but if that's removed from the table, what are people going to be drawn to if the money thing is not the scenario anymore from a job? It's it's more of the human connection, the feeling. Am I doing something together, working towards something together?
I'm part of something.
Yeah.
And you're like, all
as
those
humans,
things,
we're designed just to create, right? And build and do stuff
and explore. And I was having a conversation with a guy that works with us, and it's just the exploration factor of the human experience is something that is just embedded in our DNA, and then the connection. There's just these certain things, and I also think from a spiritual perspective is to say, how distracted are we? I'm reading this book right now called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Have you read that?
Yeah. I think my wife did, and I basically read it through her.
Yeah, I'm actually frustrated right now because I just started, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is me. He's talking to me. And it's this essence of like, we're so distracted, right? Everyone agrees with that. You're on your phone more than you'd like. You're constantly doing something. That's this new world order. And we're trying to come back. I'm in a group of men. We're all in our mid-30s and 40s. And now we have families. We want to be more present at home. We want to have all these goals and wishes. We want to be more connected to our creator. But man, I'm just so distracted. I'm just so busy at work. I have all these things I want to do. And it's like, to me, I just like look at this, speaking of it, look at it as an opportunity. It's like, man, what if all this distraction stuff that we're dealing with, like you got some help with that? And then we could spend more time as humans on exploring what we're doing here and the curiosity and the connection and stuff like that. I would think most people would agree that may not be a bad thing. Like, may not be a bad thing.
I agree.
So,
yeah, I mean, the time we can free up for doing that, to be more creative, it's going to be, to do the things we want to do or we're drawn to do is going to be exciting in that capacity for sure. And there's a scenario I heard on the podcast on the way, honestly, here today, where you can go one way. It's the red pill, blue pill scenario.
Yes.
We have premium. There used to be a premium cost for knowledge. There no longer is. other than maybe $20 a month or something like that, right? There's no longer a premium for that. There's no longer, so knowledge is abound. If we, again, kind of tweak to where we're headed, really from the ecosystem of the digital age we've been growing, been living in for several decades now, the premium for that usually was programming, right? Like, well, I'm limited to whatever people have programmed or programming can do for me. But the reality is, there's things called Replit, other things like that, where you can just type in what you want or say, make me this website, take an Airbnb and remake this website, and it'll program the whole thing for you as well. So the limitations of what we're capable of now is basically whatever we can think of. And that's the world we're going into now, where there's not really going to be a lot of limitations on what's possible anymore in this digital age. And so, yeah, I don't know. Exciting, terrifying, both at the same time.
As we wrap up, one thing I wanted to acknowledge, and maybe you can speak to this, Rod. You think about it's micro contextual too. We're in the insurance business in Florida, so the last 5 years have been crazy. And I remember, you go, what would be the soft market, right? A lot of insurance companies are writing business. Everyone wants to play. Prices are competitive. It's then you have the hard market. Insurance companies are pulling out. Underwriting's tight. Premiums are going up. People are unhappy. All this different stuff. But I remember asking this 5 years ago, and we were talking about, well, who wins in a hard market? And it's the same answer that Landry gave. Well, those who see it as opportunity.
That's right.
Because if for those that see it as opportunity, you start asking the questions of what would have to happen, or what would it look like? What would we need to be? Who would I have to become as a leader? I've been used to leading this way. Who do I need to be now? Yeah. Right. And
I remember us talking about it's like we said we're not going to allow the word hard market. It's just a different market. And who are we going to figure it out, or is somebody else?
You remember what we used to say? We say the harder it gets, the better it gets.
The better it gets.
So we had this
the
mantra
more opportunity, throughout
the ecosystem.
Yeah, that's true.
You would lead and start meetings with that. Hey guys, it's hard. It's great. The harder it gets, the better it gets. And here's how we're going to attack it. We don't have all the answers. We can't predict when AI's going to be, but here's what we know. That we see it as an opportunity, and we're gonna frame all our actions through that rather than coming from a place of fear. So I think for the listener, if you can take anything other than the nuggets that Landry dropped, it's like choose to see it as an opportunity.
Yeah. Certainly don't look at it as though you're hamstringed by it, because I tell you what, it'll roll right over you. And even if you're not, you still better have your running shoes laced up.
Yeah, it's gonna happen a whole lot faster than most people assume.
Yeah. Is there any parting word that you would encourage the listener with?
I mean, like I said, just the security-wise, I get that. I'm blessed to have some family deep in the AI security world, so that has made me less afraid of it in that scenarios. And I think there's a lot of great people in the background making sure that hopefully there's some boundaries here and this, that, or the other, that we do this the right way. Because I think that's obviously a big fear that most people have, and I think rightly so. But a lot of the stuff, like the Googles, the Copilots, they're, like I say, a lot of it's built in our native systems and is pretty secure on that type of stuff. They're not using your data in that capacity. I'm fairly confident of that with a lot of those conversations with him. So, but it's gonna be exciting. Just paying attention to the news. Don't be afraid to just kind of at least follow along with what's going on. And trying to educate yourself a little bit on this.
Speaking of following along, you put out a lot of cool content. Where can people find you? And I would encourage the listener to do that. Where can they find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Landry Fields. There's only two of us, so I'm the shorter, skinnier, lighter-skinned one of us. We're Facebook friends, so I could say that. But yeah, LinkedIn, find me on Facebook, Instagram, Landry Fields _. Yeah, I get a lot of questions with the AI stuff and trying to put out some content to hopefully help educate business owners and this, that, or the other as far as what's going on out there. Because like I said, it is changing so rapidly in a constant manner that just trying to pay attention more from just a news, don't be afraid to just be a consumer right now, but note that at some point you do have to take actionables on that, because you can't just be a consumer forever on it. You got to start somewhere sometimes at some point, but don't be afraid to just be a consumer right now to educate yourself.
Man, that's
outstanding.
Good. Well, man, when I think about authentic, I think about quality, I think about you, man. You're a classy cat. Perfect. Thank you for your friendship.
Hey guys, this is Brett Young, Taylor Young, and Rod Erb, and you're tuned in to the Be Extraordinary podcast with Urban Young. Real conversation.
And I think I butchered that intro.
At the other one.
Which one is it?
The bottom one.
He'll edit that. This one right here? Is it the bottom right? Bottom left. All right.
Bottom left.
Cool, guys. And don't forget to be extraordinary. I was wondering about that.
Thank you,
Thank
Landry.
you,
It's great to
Landry.
have you, dude.
I appreciate it. Thanks for Brett
Thanks for
interrupting
being
us
here,
there.
man.
We couldn't be here.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Miss you,
We
be
miss
young.
you, BY.
We need you.